It's no secret that Pikmin 2 is my favourite Pikmin game, and judging by people's reactions, a lot of people think the same thing. Though it is the black sheep member of the Pikmin franchise, I and many others do agree that it is the best because of its changes. That being said, no game is a perfect game, so today we're going to be going through everything wrong with Pikmin 2. Do be aware this list is not in any particular order, but let's get on with things. Number 1, it breaks the Pikmin formula. Now this is a very nitpicky point, but it is very substantial. Pikmin 1 had created a baseline of how the Pikmin franchise was supposed to go. The whole plot being, you are supposed to be in a limited time frame, and you've only got so much time to deal with a task before you can get a very bad ending. Pikmin 2 doesn't have that. There is no bad ending, there is no repercussions. There is no time limit placed upon you, and on top of that, you don't even have to follow the daytime cycle for the most part because of the caves that freeze time. In a way, you could say that it completely goes against Mr. Miyamoto's original vision for Pikmin. On top of that, it feels like it was doing a giant money grab in the fact that it made so many sponsors and used that in the treasure that you collect, almost making it seem like it was more of a corporate Pikmin game rather than a passionate Miyamoto one. This can also be seen by the fact that Mr. Miyamoto put back his passion into Pikmin 3, and again, that stuck more to the Pikmin 1 formula. So though we may enjoy this broken Pikmin formula, it does go against the franchise as a bit of a weird game on its own, and maybe Mr. Miyamoto himself isn't as big a fan of it as everyone else is. Number 2, the caves are overbearing. Caves are the big main mechanic that I introduced to Pikmin 2, but they are such a gigantic mechanic that they are basically the entire game. Based off of the first game, you would expect for the majority of the events of the game to take place on the surface, or at the very least, continue with the daytime cycle, but caves completely obliterate that. Because not only do caves freeze time so that the daytime meter is completely irrelevant, as we have just mentioned, but these caves aren't designed to be a simple 17-minute journey. Some of these caves seem to go on forever. And that's just counterintuitive. For a game to suddenly go into less of a 17-minute adventure, do what you can, into just keep going forwards and do everything on the way, it's just overbearing. On top of that, there is very little surface gameplay in comparison to the cave gameplay. The ratio is far taken away. There are only 4 surface areas in Pikmin 2, the exact same as Pikmin 1, yet there are a multitude of caves in each of these surface areas that take way longer than any of the surface level could ever hope to achieve. It's way too in your face, and it doesn't really make much of an open world, naturistic feel. It's just closed and underground, and it goes on forever. Number 3, the cave's randomness mechanic is just lazy. The caves themselves, despite being 80% of Pikmin 2, weren't really created as specific level designs by the creators. All the creators did was create a series of assets and then made the game's engine randomly design each level for each sub-level of each cave. This is efficient, and again goes into the idea of a corporation making a cash money game that's easy to create, but it doesn't have any true passion or design to it. Many of these sub-levels are a victim to these weird randomness with pathways that don't seem to go anywhere or are just simply counterintuitive. It's lazy, and it's not fun. Many of these level designs just aren't fun to players, or they seem cruel or unfair. It's unplayer friendly, and just doesn't have heart. Number 4, the creature design is unfriendly. Pikmin 2 did bring a brand new plethora of all sorts of unique creatures that could be found and discovered within the Pikmin 2 world. However, many of these creatures are over the top powerful in a lot of different ways, and though that does make the game challenging and more investing for the player, in a lot of ways it is just cruel. Creating a creature that can shoot explosive rounds at your Pikmin but you can't attack them from the front is deathly frustrating and difficult for any kind of player to take on, especially when you can consider that they can knock down the captains and get them stuck in a loop so that they can do very little to help the Pikmin that are around them. And onto the fact that this creature can also be planted up top in a tower, so that only a particular type of Pikmin can reach them, and the fact that it can't be attacked from the front means you have to somehow circle around it, even though it's constantly going to be looking at you. This is the case for many other creatures, like those that drop bomb rocks around other bomb rocks or can throw Pikmin off the abyss. How about when there's a creature that can literally whistle your Pikmin, but it's planted next to a body of water as if expecting you to fall exactly into that trap? It's one thing to have a difficulty spike or a slow progression of difficulty, but some of these creatures are just cruel and unfriendly to play against. Some players may find this fun to go with this extra challenge, but for many, this is a big turn-off. Number 5, there is a surprising difficulty spike in the game. Difficulty spikes are not good. Nobody generally enjoys them. You may enjoy the gameplay before and after, but having such a steep jump from one to the other is just bad game design, or at least not one most people would agree with. And this is the same case for Pikmin 2. At the start of the game, there is an obvious progression for what caves are accessible and how easy they are. And as you explore, you will find caves do get more difficult, and you do get the choice of what path you take, so you can find a difficulty spike in that direction. But the major difficulty spike takes place when you go to the Wistful Wild, because all 3 of these last caves are deathly challenging, and far beyond, I think, what we've experienced before. Even with things like the Water Wraith and the Man at Legs, which on its own is a difficulty spike of its own, the Wistful Wild is just cruel, having all sorts of bomb rock traps, endlessly long caves, and just over-the-top level designs. What is this sub-level with so many bulbs? It's literally like a child designed the level to be as difficult as possible. I understand that it is the last level, but I would want there to be a little bit more of a progression to it. I guess it does depend on what order you go in, and you can follow the caves to get gradually more difficult, but it still certainly feels like the Wistful Wild is 3 steps ahead of any of the other caves beforehand. Though this may come down to preference and a little bit of nitpicking. Number 6, the treasures are too similar. I get that Pikmin 2 was trying to expand the amount of things we collect. There's 201 pieces of treasure to collect in the whole game. That's an amazing number, but at the same time, some of these treasures felt kind of lazy. I can understand with, say, the first treasure. That's a simple battery, and it comes with part of a set. There are several other types of batteries you can find, and that to some degree also works in real life. There are a variety of batteries, different styles that you can collect if you're that kind of guy. And I can also understand that there were many different companies that wanted to advertise their products into this game. But let's just start with a simple one. Why are there so many different bottle caps? Was there really no other way to represent certain companies? I don't even know how many bottle cap treasures there are, but there are way too many of them anyway. Same can be said for many different types of jewel sets. There's hearts, and there's like clovers, and all sorts of things that we've already seen. And even if you can justify a good chunk of these treasures because of the companies that are associated with them, and you can argue that they can't do anything other than show a jar or a lid or a whatever, answer me this. Why is there duplicates of food? No company owns strawberries, but why is it there are 2 very different types of strawberries you can get? Whose idea was it to give us a rubber duck and a rubber duck head? I don't understand why that got through. There's a billion items in the world that could be collected that weren't. Why did we get duplications of things? It's a nitpicky thing, sure, because there's loads of treasures to collect, but why wasn't there more variety like milk tubs rather than pots and pans that we've seen a few times over? Sometimes it just felt like you were collecting the same thing twice. Number 7, there is a lack of retryability. Pikmin 3 introduced a wonderful mechanic of being able to repeat your days as a way to try and do what you've done already faster, or perhaps to take a different route entirely. In Pikmin 2, this isn't the case, not just because there isn't the mechanic of retrying days, it also wasn't the case in Pikmin 1, they were just early games, that is fine, but Pikmin 2 specifically locks you away as you progress. You can't repeat a day, but you also can't even repeat a cave. When you go to a new sublevel, you are saved into that sublevel. You can reset the game if you really wanted to after a devastating defeat, but you're still locked into that sublevel. You can't go back any further. Once you've entered, you can't escape unless you find a specific asset that will let you. This is a little counterintuitive, as I think I would have preferred being able to go out of the cave and go somewhere else instead for the day, rather than having to suffer through the cave to even get a chance to leave again, whether by the means of forcibly fighting through the cave or just going as a captain through to each hole until you reach the bottom. Congrats! You've made it to the halfway mark. You are now halfway through this exact video, so I'm going to take this moment to just kind of send out my links, because I assume you're enjoying the content that I'm making, so here's a few extra things you can find. As a general note, I upload on this channel 2 times a week, every Friday and every Sunday. Fridays being at 6 PM GMT, and Sundays being at 3 PM GMT. That's UK time zone, in case you didn't know. If you want to see more content from me, then I'm also streaming 4 times a week over on my Twitch page, Daz Videos. We do those on Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, though you can see this next week's schedule up on screen now. If any of these days are faded away, then it means I can't do it for this week, but it will usually be the case. These streams are always at 6 PM, so yes, if you do see a video on Friday, I am streaming the same time that it comes out. Other links of mine that you can find are my Twitter page, at DazVideos, and my Patreon page, which is again, Daz Videos. I want to say a big thank you to our new Patreon supporters and our old ones, as I have been struggling financially as of recently, but some of you have risen up and just made life a lot easier for me. It's nice being able to pay for food and not worry too much. I'll try not to make too much of a sob story this week, but I still just greatly appreciate you, and I'm probably going to keep doing this at every halfway mark. I apologize, but I guess that's just going to be the way it is. Anyway, let's continue with the video, shall we? Number 8, and a pretty big point, the music is unmemorable. There are some good tracks. My personal favourites are the ones in the cutscenes, but again, if it's the ones in the cutscenes, they're only going to get played once. The majority of the game takes place in the caves, and the cave music is the stuff that is the most unmemorable. It's ambient and weird in that it just uses different instruments. They may evoke a theme or an atmosphere, and they do repeat in certain sublevels, but nobody remembers them. They might remember an asset or a kind of style, but just as unmemorable as the level design is due to the random nature of them, the music just doesn't stand out. There are some good tracks, but most of them are not. Number 9, the story doesn't make logical sense. We know now from Pikmin 3 that Kopai and Hokotate are 150,000 light years away, so in order to travel back and forth, that takes a passing of time, or something to that degree, especially because we see between Pikmin 1 and 2 and Pikmin 2 and 3, there is a giant change in the Pikmin world, or Earth, or whatever you want to call it. But not only is Olimar constantly talking to people back on Hokotate, which might make some sense since there's no real light speed travel going on, when Olimar travels all the way back to Hokotate and then goes back forwards again, he's left Louis behind. How is it that he can go all the way back to Hokotate, have a conversation with his boss and go back and time has changed on the planet, but when he does it again the second time, everything's exactly the same as before? Shouldn't Louis be old and dead and as a long buried fossil at this point? It just doesn't make logical sense to me. It's a bit of a plot hole that just kind of irks me. But of course, this plot hole keeps repeating later on. Number 10, the purples are overpowered. Purples are the new Pikmin introduced to Pikmin 2. They have no special abilities apart from the fact that they are strong. They have 10 times the strength and 3 times the power of all the other Pikmin. Though they are kind of slow, it doesn't really balance them out too much. The slow aesthetic only acts to slow down the gameplay, because any normal player would simply wait for the purple Pikmin to catch up before throwing them straight away. I don't know why they expected us to immediately run and throw, it just isn't smart by any means. But the over-the-top power of the purple Pikmin and the fact that they can stun enemies they land on just makes it so that they are irreplaceable in any fight. Most of the time, you won't even use the yellows or the blues or the whites, it's just the reds and the purples because they are the sole fighters. Having such an unbalanced Pikmin cast just isn't good. It doesn't make sense, and it's poor design. Number 11, disbanding is a pain. Disbanding has always been a thing in the Pikmin games, but Pikmin 2 had a particularly difficult time with it because there are 5 or 6 different types of Pikmin that can be disbanded. On top of that, the cave level designs are small and compact and randomly designed. Add on to the fact that the AI don't seem to be really good even when they are in an expansive world, and you see that the disbanding is just a pain. They don't disband very far, and a lot of times just seem to combine anyway. Add on to the fact that the whistle is giant and can be upgraded to be even more giant, and you just can't separate your Pikmin. The best thing you can do is hold on to them and switch between them in your hand, which is a good mechanic on its own, but disbanding is a major mechanic of the Pikmin franchise. So at the very least, it should work. But it doesn't in this game. Number 12, the areas become repetitive. The surface areas do fine. They are representative of the 4 seasons, they're all vibrant and different, there may be some repeating assets, but otherwise it's all good. Underground though, it's not the same. There are many sub-levels for the player to discover, and there is not a new theme for each one. There's not even a new theme for each cave. Multiple caves have the same visual aesthetic, even though they're in completely different locations, and because of that, it gets kinda boring, especially because you start to see it's the same assets being reused by the random level design generator. Oh hey look, it's the metallic toilet asset. Oh, it's the bridge that goes over a pond surrounded by rocks. It's not as investing. There are good areas and good locations in Pikmin 2, but a lot of it is just repeating more of the same. It's not good level design, it's not investing, it's just another thing you have to walk over. Again. Number 13, there are too many long-legged creatures. I get what they're going for with a kind of Dweevil theme, especially because the Titan Dweevil is the big bad boss, but by the time I actually saw the Titan Dweevil for the first time, I was sick of Dweevils. Pikmin 1 introduced us the beady longlegs. It was a grand fight, and I'm glad that it made a reappearance in Pikmin 2. Later on, Pikmin 2 also introduces us to smaller Dweevils, one of each elemental type, which is fine enough on its own, though they are awfully annoying as well considering the fact that they pick up treasure and corpses, so you have to take care of them in order to make any progress. I also really dislike that I'm too colorblind to tell the difference between them, and the damn electric one always kills all my Pikmin, but that's more of a personal thing that I'm not going to bring up in this video apart from the fact that I did just now. So on top of those 5 different types of longlegs, we then also get introduced to the raging longlegs inside the Hole of Heroes, as well as the man-at legs in another cave. That's just so many creatures with the same kind of style of wait for it to do its attack, get in the middle of its legs, and then attack. Then you whistle and you get out of the way. It's repetitive again, and it gets kinda boring. I do appreciate the variety with the elements, the gun, and the size of the feet, though that one's a little bit more of a small addition. And the Titan Dweevil is probably one of my favorite boss fights of all time. But there's just too many of them. Maybe if all the other creatures had all these different repetitions as well, it would feel nicer. There's just way too much of a ratio of Dweevils to not Dweevils. And those elemental ones appear goddamn everywhere. Number 14, some enemies can't be awakened in the Piklopedia. The Piklopedia is like my favorite sub-thing in the Pikmin franchise, but it does have its flaws. The dialogue is great, the interactions with many of the creatures are wonderful, but Why can't I wake up all of them? Why is it that so many Pikmin carrots I throw at this damn Empress Bulblax never seems to wake it up? It's even awake at the beginning and then goes to sleep. Wake up! What do I have to do to make you just roll over my Pikmin carrots? It's what I need in life. Give me more. Dance, monkey, dance. Oh. Number 15, purples can break level design. Complaining about the purples again, cause why not, they are that overpowered. Yellow Pikmin are supposed to have the ability to have the extra height. There's clearly treasures designed to be caught only by the yellow Pikmin. But the purple Pikmin's altered trajectory just completely overwhelms it. You can get a multitude of yellow specific treasures just by using the purples and being pressuring enough. It's fun to do, it's nice that you can break the game, but it is as well bad level design. I shouldn't be able to do this, so tut tut on you level designers, stop being so corporate, you. Now, I'm sorry to cut it off there, but I'm afraid we're gonna have to split this video into 2 parts, because I apparently found a lot of things wrong with Pikmin 2, even though it was my favourite game in the whole Pikmin franchise. Ah well, it's all the more content for you. If I was to make this video overly long, then you probably might find it too overwhelming, so I apologise for splitting it into 2 parts, but to me, it's the only logical thing to do. So, thank you for watching this video all the way up to this point, but I'm afraid I am gonna have to end it off here. If you'd like to see my links to my Twitter page, my Twitch page, or my Patreon, they will all be down in the description. Thank you to the Shepherd256, Dylan Brill, DazzleKitty, Melchor Velasco, Farian, kritikill, Daniel, and Luke. Thank you so much for supporting me in these recent times, I greatly do appreciate it. Anyway, for now, my name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. Which might make some sense since the slow aesthetic only acts to slow the playing. The slow aesthetic.